Ready to hop in the TARDIS. Today, we're taking a deep dive into, well, the best of Doctor Who, at least according to this article we found.
Oh, this is going to be good.
Yeah, I think so. Now, I know Doctor Who has been around forever, but just in case, the quick version is alien dude, calls himself the Doctor, zips around time and space.
In a blue police box, right?
Exactly. And the coolest part, he regenerates into new bodies, so there have been a ton of different actors playing the role over the, decades the show's been running.
Which is actually what makes this deep dive so interesting, even if you're not a huge Doctor Who fan.
I see that.
Because Doctor Who is such a big deal, culturally speaking, figuring out what makes it tick tells you something about sci-fi as a whole,
Right.
how it grabs people, how it changes with the times.
Right, and the article we're using today focuses specifically on the 2005 revival, which is like its own beast.
Totally. Because you've got fans who grew up with the classic series, you've got this whole new audience who might not know William Hartnell from Tom Baker.
And the article really dives into that, talking about how the original Doctor Who, which started in the 60s, was meant to be educational.
Really? I never knew that.
Yeah, like teaching kids history and science through these crazy sci-fi adventures. And it worked. It ran for ages, built up this huge following, became a British institution, basically.
That's wild, but also kind of makes sense. You sneak in learning with cool spaceships and aliens, kids are going to eat it up.
Exactly. But that brings up the question, how do you translate that for a modern audience? Like, how do you keep that spirit of adventure while competing with shows that have, way more explosions and stuff?
Right, because audiences in the 2000s were used to a much faster pace. The article seems to argue that the revival did a pretty good job at first. But then things get, well, interesting.
Yeah, because the article doesn't hold back on criticizing the newer seasons, does it? It talks about a perceived decline in quality, saying the show lost that signature optimism and maybe got a little too caught up trying to be, I don't know, trendy or something.
Well, got to remember, every critic has their own taste, right? What one person sees as a decline, another might love. The value here is that the article makes us think. What makes good sci-fi in the first place? Is it just fun escapism? Does it have to make you think about the world? Or is it some magic mix of both?
It's a good point. Really gets you thinking.
Exactly. And that's something you, listening right now, can ponder as we go deeper.
I love that. And speaking of going deeper, let's talk about the episode the article highlights as, the peak of the revival, the Impossible Planet, and the Satan Pit two-parter. Just the names are intriguing.
Oh, yeah, those are classics.
Right. And the premise, wild. We've got a planet somehow orbiting a black hole, super close.
Now, how's that possible?
I know, right? It's defying physics. And then we have a group of explorers stuck there and this creepy, evil entity lurking around. It's giving me chills just thinking about it.
It's tapping into that classic sci-fi fear of the unknown. We think we understand the universe, but what happens when we encounter something that just breaks those rules? It makes you question everything.
I'm getting goosebumps already. But it's not just about cool sci-fi concepts. The article mentioned how suspenseful and emotionally deep these episodes are. These characters are facing some serious danger and some really tough choices. It's not just theoretical problems, it's life or death stuff.
And that's where the cosmic horror element comes in, right? That fear of something vast, ancient, and beyond our comprehension. Something Lovecraftian, there are things out there that humans just weren't meant to understand.
I can see that. Definitely creepy.
But remember, we have the Doctor there, and he represents hope. He's that brilliant, resourceful character who faces these challenges head-on using his knowledge and his wit. It's not just about running away, it's about facing the unknown and trying to make sense of it. That's a big part of what makes Doctor Who so compelling. It's thrilling adventure, Andy. It makes you think.
See, this is why I love this show. But we need to step back for a second and consider what this episode tells us about Doctor Who's wider appeal, especially during this successful revival period.
Good point. We've only scratched the surface here.
Right. Are these themes and ideas specific to this era? Or are they part of the show's DNA, so to speak? And what does that mean for shows trying to recapture that magic today? So many questions.
So many questions indeed.
It's funny. The Impossible Planet and the Satan Pit, they really do seem to capture what the article loved about the revival.
Right. That mix of exciting adventure, cool sci-fi ideas, and characters actually having to make hard choices, not just, easy outs.
It's like they took classic Doctor Who and made it, I don't know, more cinematic. Modernized it without losing the heart.
Exactly. But it makes you think, if this two-parter is the peak, what happened after? The article's pretty harsh on the newer seasons, and I've seen fans online echo that.
Well, we gotta remember, it's one opinion, right?
Yeah.
And even among fans, what one person sees as a decline, another might see as growth, or even just a different flavor they like better.
True, true. But the article's point is still interesting. Can a show really recapture its magic after a certain point? Or is some decline, like, inevitable as time goes on? It happens to so many franchises.
Doesn't it? It's like there are those amazing early seasons or those first few movies, and then it kind of loses something. Is it the creators getting tired? Studio meddling? Trying too hard to be what they think people want? I wonder what our listeners think about that.
I bet there's a bunch of reasons. Sometimes, yeah, the original team moves on, and that spark is gone. Or the pressure to keep being successful makes them scared to take risks, so it gets formulaic.
Yeah, you get stuck in a rut.
And audiences change too, right? What blew people's minds 10 years ago might feel old hat now. Like special effects, those change so fast.
Good point. So, is the answer to constantly chase trends? Or is there a way to stay true to what made the show great while also bringing in new ideas? It's got to be a tough balance.
Tough for sure. But I think a big part is remembering what worked in the first place. What were the core themes, the characters, the storytelling that really resonated? Don't lose those.
Like in Doctor Who, it's that sense of wonder, right? Exploring big ideas, the Doctor always being optimistic and compassionate, even when things are dark. And those alien worlds. You can update the look, but keep those elements.
Exactly. If you can hold on to that heart, then you can refresh the storytelling around it. But yeah, delicate balance for sure.
Now, the article is pretty gloomy on current Doctor Who, but from everything we talked about, is there hope? Can it get back to what made it so great? Or are these challenges just too big?
I wouldn't give up hope just yet. Even in the quote-unquote golden eras, there were episodes some fans didn't love.
Oh, for sure. Not every episode can be a home run.
And remember, even with David Tennant, who this article loves,
Yeah,
there were probably episodes people thought were just okay. Tastes are so varied.
that's true. So maybe instead of focusing on decline, we should look at what we can learn from the good and the bad. What choices worked, which ones didn't. Apply those lessons to future seasons. That's got to be valuable, right?
I think that's a brilliant way to look at it. Studying the show, understanding the decisions made, and how audiences reacted, that's like a master class in storytelling, isn't it?
It is. And it's not just for Doctor Who fans, right? This deep dive is making us think about all the media we consume. What makes a story truly great? What keeps it alive for decades? It's something we can all take away.
Could agree more. It's like we're not just watching passively, we're thinking about the choices behind the scenes, the impact on us, the whole conversation between creators and their audience.
Now, just one more thing from the article that's been bugging me. The Doctor's backstory. The revival made it much darker. He's the last of his kind after a huge war, right? What's the impact of that? How does it fit into what we've been talking about?
Oh, that's a great point, and it's actually the perfect lead into our final part. Hang on to that thought, listener, because we're going to unpack that right after this.
Okay, so we left off talking about how the revival gave the Doctor this whole tragic backstory. He's not just some time traveler anymore. He's the last of the Time Lords, right? After a devastating war.
It's such a powerful choice because it adds this whole other dimension to him. Before, yeah, he fought bad guys, but it was almost like adventurous. Now, there's this sadness underneath it all.
Like he's seen the worst that can happen and he's trying to stop it from happening again.
Exactly. He's not just fighting evil for fun, it's personal. He's carrying the weight of his entire civilization, the only survivor of this cosmic genocide. It makes you think about survivor's guilt, that burden of responsibility, and just how lonely it must be to be the last of your kind.
It reframes everything he does, doesn't it? It's not just random planets he's saving. It's like he's trying to protect the universe from going through what his people did.
Right, and that ties into the themes of hope and resilience that are so important to Doctor Who. Even though he's gone through something so awful, he still chooses to fight for good, to help people. It's a powerful message about the strength of the human spirit, even when things are really dark.
It's like no matter what setbacks you face, you can still choose to be kind, to make things better. Kind of like what we were saying about how shows change over time. Even when they struggle, there's potential for something new and meaningful to come out of it.
That's a great connection, and I think that's why the Doctor is such a relatable character. He embodies those good parts of humanity, that kindness and ingenuity, that stubborn belief that things can get better.
But, going back to the article's criticism of the later seasons, do you think this darker backstory maybe played a part in the show's tonal shift? It seems like it would naturally lead to more serious stories, less of that lighthearted feel.
I think there's definitely a link. By giving the Doctor this tragic past, the writers might have felt like they had to explore those heavier themes, go deeper into his struggles.
Which, as you said, could make the show feel less fun, less whimsical. Maybe that's why some fans who loved the earlier seasons felt like something was missing.
It's possible. It reminds us that even when creators make changes to improve a story, it can have unintended side effects. Sometimes those changes don't land with everyone. It's a balancing act.
So, can Doctor Who find that balance? Can they keep those darker elements while still having that sense of adventure, that hope that makes it so special?
That's the million-dollar question, right? How does any long-running show evolve without losing its heart? I think the key is to incorporate those darker elements without letting them completely take over. Don't forget the Doctor's core. His wit, his compassion, his curiosity, those are what make him so enduring.
So maybe it's not about saying one era is better than another. It's about understanding that storytelling is complex and that shows are always changing, reflecting the times they're made in, the people making them.
Exactly. And as viewers, it's up to us to decide what we connect with, what makes a story truly great. That's part of the fun, right? Having those conversations, debating what works and what doesn't.
I think that's a perfect way to wrap this up. What started as a deep dive into Doctor Who turned into this exploration of storytelling as a whole. We talked about education versus entertainment, appealing to different generations of fans, and how tough it is to keep a show going for decades. We even got into how creative choices, even good ones, can have unexpected results.
And it's not just about Doctor Who, right? These are things that apply to any kind of story. Books, movies, music, even podcasts. It's about understanding the choices creators make, how those choices affect us, and that ongoing conversation between the people making art and the people experiencing it.
I love that. So next time you're watching something, reading something, listening to something that really grabs you, remember the things we talked about today. Think about what makes that story unique, what choices the creators made, and how it all comes together to create that magic. It's a whole new way to appreciate the things we love.
It's been fantastic exploring these ideas with you.
Yeah.
Keep those minds curious, everyone, and remember, the world of storytelling, there's always something new waiting to be discovered.